started right on time.
That would be great.
So, for everybody that is here, welcome. My name is Lee Davis. I'm a faculty member at KCAD. I teach in the interior design program. I'm also a member of the Innovations Advisory Team, and it has been a fantastic day. And congratulations to all of those that were part of that planning team. It could not have been easy, and it is very much appreciated with all the organization. We are here to listen to John Moroney talk to us today about interdisciplinary innovation teams. It is a half-hour presentation, so we're only going to have about 5 minutes at the end for question and answer. But if you put things into the chat, John can kind of follow along with that and answer as he goes, as well as at the end. So with that, take it away.
All right, thank you, Lee, and thanks everyone for joining. I'm excited to talk to you today a little bit about the convergence of three hats that I wear in my life as a designer, an educator, and an entrepreneur, and how they relate to our topic today of interdisciplinary innovation teams, and more specifically, how we can create impactful student learning experiences around entrepreneurship and innovation. So back in 2013, I really started to think more about this type of experience for students. I had the opportunity to participate in a startup weekend event with a group of students, and we connected with a few local professionals, spent the weekend together, and created a cool little product and ended up winning first place in this competition. The students were super excited. It was pretty inspirational for me as well. And one of the things that I took away from that experience that's kind of always stuck with me, almost as a mantra now, the facilitator said, another team in another city is working on the same idea right now. What makes your idea unique is you and the team that you have. And they put that emphasis on the team and encourage people to think about the people they were working with over the weekend, how they were interacting with each other, how they could support each other and build ideas together. And that's always really stuck with me. A few years later, I had the opportunity to create one of my handful of startups, Sled Legs, and this one in particular, I had the opportunity to create my own team. And so I thought back on some of those lessons as I created these folks, and I intentionally grabbed a group of people that I thought, you know, all were kind of like-minded in some ways, but had something just a little bit different to offer to the team. And I thought this was a team that could really move this idea forward. And so we set up our Kickstarter program and started promoting the idea. And within 6 months' time, we completed that. We had a product that we could sell that worked, that everybody was really excited about. So things moved really quickly, and we solved a lot of problems together in a very short period of time. Within a year later, we had redesigned the product, bought more tooling, had more sizes, added colors, more problems to solve. We started our e-commerce business, launched our website, started to sell to Amazon, went through all the Amazon fulfillment hurdles, more problems to solve. And then people wanted to talk about it. So who's going to talk to the press? What are we going to say? What should we not say? More problems to solve. When we started our Kickstarter campaign, I think we shipped out maybe 500 units. The year after that, we did about 8,000. The year after that, we did about 18,000. And then we had another big problem to solve. How the heck were we going to move all these things? So after we solved that problem, people wanted to understand our story. They want to talk to us about our journey and what we were going to say, who was going to handle that. Unfortunately, that ended up being me, but it gave me another opportunity to solve more problems. And at the end of the day, through this whole experience, it dawned on me that the experience of starting and growing a business is just one big complex problem to solve. And more importantly, I could not have done it without the right team with me and behind me. So here we are, back at this idea of trying to form the right team. So it's also worth noting that it isn't just about the right people. It's about finding people that have a passion for the same idea. That seemed to be kind of a key ingredient. And some of the other secret ingredients that I discovered along the way include things like personal experiences that connect people, you know, the ability to bounce back and forth between big picture and small details. You know, minimal capability overlap was kind of important. executing quickly in parallel, lots of communication, trust, and work ethic. All these great things were valuable lessons that we all learned along the way. So as I started to research this a little bit more, I discovered that the super team approach, it is fueled by innovation and entrepreneurship, but it isn't just for startups. And the startup culture is influencing a great deal of corporate innovation models. And these two things are crossing over more and more every year. So I don't know how many of you have heard the term intrapreneurship, but kind of refers to someone who thinks like an entrepreneur within a larger organization. And I discovered through some research that bigger companies are thinking like startups. They're using creative teams who plan and execute outside the lines to find their next big growth ideas. As I conducted more research, I'd come across articles that said things like this. We want to hire people that have entrepreneurship wired into their DNA, promote to leaders those who are not afraid to make decisions and take risks. I found that several companies like Google allocate employees 20 to 10% of their time every year to work on innovative ideas that have nothing to do with their normal jobs. In fact, some of the most interesting and disruptive products that we've seen over the years have come from some of these company policies. So the more I looked into this, kind of the light bulb went off, and I thought, even if students don't start a business, there's a lot of value in teaching them to think like entrepreneurs and embrace innovation that way. So I kind of formed this central question, how can we facilitate a learning experience where students can lead innovation, think bigger, and work in teams to solve complex problems? So the first thing I had to do was rethink the process. And 5 key things sort of came from that. One, we had to figure out how to create a stronger feeling of ownership with the students and the ideas. We had to embrace interdisciplinary teamwork. We had to implement lean startup methodology and human-centered design together, heavy collaboration with experts, and learning in real context. A couple models Brooke and I covered earlier, but key to this were the IDEO, human-centered design, lenses of desirable, feasible, viable, 10 types of innovation, and thinking about how to innovate all aspects of a business model, and using the lean startup business model canvas to help create and strengthen business model ideas. So what I'd like to do is take you through a handful of the experiments that I've had a privilege of being a part of over the years, and talk about briefly what the students learned, and then share a list of 10 principles that I think could be considered anytime you create this type of student experience. So the first is kind of a bucket of entrepreneurship workshops. These are quick hit experiences, typically a weekend or a week. That's all about designing a business model and a product or service. Student startup team projects, lots of interdisciplinary work like the MWest pitch competition, the startup weekends. Usually there's a little money involved. And these experiences are fast paced, lots of dynamic teamwork, students having fun, most importantly, developing ideas, designing unique business models and rethinking the value that they're creating, gathering lots of community feedback through formal and informal methods, mastering the 60-second pitch, learning how to talk about their ideas competently, having the opportunity to pitch to a more formal audience and potentially win some money. And I've seen a number of our student teams find success in these events over the years. So these interdisciplinary teams with designers and businesses and marketing kind of woven together have won first place 3 of the last 4 years in the MWest Challenge. So we know that there's opportunity there and there's something powerful. And 2 students just a few years ago continued on to actually launch their product after graduation. And these 2 students, this is one engineer and one designer that worked together, and they won somewhere around, $90,000 worth of funding through various collegiate startup competitions. All started with a startup weekend project. I had the opportunity on sabbatical a few years back to develop and facilitate a workshop working with a local company in England, and we positioned students in teams of industrial design, engineering, business, and marketing. So I built on the startup weekend experience and structured the teams a little more intently and worked with an existing startup company to help them discover ways to grow their business. So we had a very balanced team approach intentionally. We had teams working together on ideas, and then we had heavy group interaction where the teams could work back and forth and bounce ideas off of each other. We had more realistic product and manufacturing constraints around ideas. And the students' teams had the opportunity to pitch their strategy to the leadership team for the startup, and the winning team was actually awarded internships for the summer to continue developing their ideas. So all kinds of opportunity there, brand growth ideas, product growth ideas. The founder of this company, told me he wanted to take part in this workshop because it's what really happens in business. And I think that is probably one of the best compliments we could achieve, as educators. I had an opportunity to develop a similar type of an approach, but this was a semester-long project done in sponsorship with Herman Miller. We blended designers, engineers, business, and students studying human sciences and did the same thing. We looked at opportunities to grow Herman Miller along some parallels that they were considering in their strategic planning. Lots of contextual learning at the sponsor company, presentations to leaderships, and some of the ideas continued on to development. So we had excellent engagement with experts within the company, excellent panel discussions, contextual research done within the company. We had a team-owned space, so we had a room secured for these project teams to kind of own and do what they needed, kind of more of a studio environment, which really helped encourage more participation outside of structured class time. Professional critique of ideas and prototyping, presenting to a broader audience at the end of stakeholders. And the result was more forward-thinking growth ideas that I think really challenged the way the teams at Herman Miller thought about solving the problems they had outlined. So Gary Smith, the vice president of global design, told us he thought it was the most realistic innovation process they had seen with an educational partner. There we kind of started building on that, the success of that model, and we achieved we obtained a grant from the MEDC, and we partnered 10 students working on a tech growth project for a company, Mackinac Technology Company. And so this was a year-long project, and we had students from design, engineering, we had influence from interior design, as many different disciplines as we could, architecture, and they were looking at product line development, revenue model strategies, communication story, just kept getting broader and broader with these experiences. So we had a dedicated studio space for the startup team. We had full integration with tech experts and regular meetings on a weekly basis with this company. The students, really were functioning as interns for the company for all intents and purposes. The students created the story in a small booth around the product ideas that the company took to a Department of Energy showcase and got really good feedback on. And they created a vision for the product that this company would be developing and using to implement their energy saving technology. They had a coating technology they developed in a series of product designs around different window inserts that you could use on the inside of buildings to increase the E rating of their windows and save money. So they created all kinds of great visuals like this that helped the company eventually go on and use these assets to pitch for about $15 million in government funding to continue their business. After the projects was complete, they actually ended up hiring one of the students on in the company to serve as their first designer with some of the funding they obtained from their investment. So I don't know how much more realistic we can make the experience in that. We tried something a little bit different, and we worked with a company called First Build down in Louisville, Kentucky. You're seeing a common theme here where we're blending different disciplines together. We have, again, design, engineering, and business, but this is a company that is an offshoot of GE Appliance. And so we started this project by participating in a hackathon workshop. And the students came up with a couple of really great ideas. We took them down as student teams, and they worked together over the weekend to get a jump start on thinking about their concept. And the team that we worked with really liked what we had going, so they agreed to continue working with the students and kind of sponsor the projects over the course of the semester. And they provided us with a little bit of funding, all kinds of great prototyping resources. So we continued forward from this hackathon experience. Students got into a little bit more scientific research. They were doing meat dry aging as one of their projects. And so they had a really interesting experience trying to figure out how to predict when meat is dry aged enough. I mean, I didn't know much about it before that, but it certainly went beyond the typical mechanical design project that we're used to in industrial design. They got into developing IoT solutions and connected solutions with apps that help people control the product. They built a fully functional prototype, and we had an excellent demo day down at the company at the end of the semester where they got to present to the leadership team, and the company considered taking the product forward into their new product pipeline. So the students had the opportunity to kind of continue working on the ideas after the class and kind of help out and support that Indiegogo launch. And what was interesting about this one is the company offered them potential for future royalty revenue for the students as individuals. The next we'll talk about is a Spectrum Health project. We put together a team of engineers, business, and industrial designers. They worked with a healthcare team consisting of nurse, physician, physical therapy, and insurance. And they wanted to solve the problem of helping patients ambulate and get out of bed sooner after procedures in the hospital. So they had the opportunity for complete immersion and talking with lots of experts and understanding what that process looked like of physical therapy. They developed a full product concept, engineered the solution, and just really rethought the whole workflow integration of this concept. So the students developed the product and the business model with guidance from the healthcare experts, kind of treating it like it was a student venture. After that, the students didn't actually launch the business, but two of them actually went on to start their own businesses after graduation. One of them is one of our grads, Wes, and his K-Break, and the other one is Lindsay, and they have these heated gloves that they developed. So that experience really inspired them to think about entrepreneurship. The next is something Lee and I actually worked on together, the epilepsy monitoring unit. So this is a collaboration across several design disciplines within Kendall. We had the opportunity to kind of think through fairly complex design constraints around a special type of patient in the healthcare space, develop some empathy for these patients, lead brainstorm sessions with healthcare professionals, get lots of feedback on ideas, working very closely with that group, created a fairly robust vision for what that experience wanted to be, and actually got to support the build out of prototype space at Spectrum Health. So they hired some contractors to basically execute the vision as the students had created and get feedback, use the space to get feedback and share the ideas with lots of different healthcare providers and patients and such. Slow quick video for you here. So we also had a digital media student work on a patient education component of this to help them understand what they would go through as a patient experiencing the space and the services. So very robust solution. And these ideas were the foundation for a long-term research study that Spectrum Health is just embarking on. And they obtained some foundation funding and they're planning to build their first prototype space. I think that got delayed due to the pandemic, but I think they are intent on doing that in 2021. And I think Lee is actually going to continue conducting research with them. The last I'll talk about is Merrill Retail Design, and this is something Lee and I also collaborated on. So here we had industrial design, furniture and interior and graphics, really just thinking through a retail space experience, including messaging, branding, layout, fixtures, materials, pretty much everything we think defines the way someone experiences a retail space. And the students envisioned everything from, what somebody experiences, they walk up to the space, what it looks like on the inside, how they interact with the space and the fixture design, all the branding and the graphics and communication that kind of happens within. Again, furniture and bits and pieces that go into the space to make it functional. Even some promotional materials that people can take with them, thinking through sustainable packaging ideas and how to reinforce that brand strategy of sustainability with all the shoppers and give them something functional and a unique experience. And even taking the show on the road. So we think this approach of the interdisciplinary team, we not only had 4 students working on this project, we also had 4 faculty from different disciplines. And we were able to surround a very complex experience and address all aspects of that experience. So what did we learn? Well, the first thing is not all ideas and teams work out. I'm sharing with you the best parts, the high points, but not all of them worked out. However, there was a lot of evidence that with the right team, process, guidance, context, space, etc., we can teach innovation and foster student ownership of that process. And so from all those learning experiences, I created, what I think are 10 principles that any educator could consider when creating an effective innovation team-based experience. The first is structure teams intentionally. And for time purpose here, I'll kind of be brief, but structure teams intentionally. Don't leave that to chance. Don't let people work with their best buddy and such. Think about trying to match up personalities that work together, people who have passion around the problem. When I create teams, I usually start by offering up the problems and letting the team self-select based on what kind of problem they want to solve. If you can help put the right disciplines together and balance those teams, that's even better. Build a pivot culture. Don't let the students get on a straight path to the very end. Force them to make assumptions, provide opportunities for them to change and defend their value proposition as they learn. Avoid getting stuck on an idea and riding it all the way to the end. Make them adapt as they learn new information and change the idea as many times as they can. Require objective validation. Get outside of the classroom and the faculty and the peers. Talk to the experts, talk to the stakeholders, the people that will benefit from the ideas they're developing. Focus on the pitch. Start with what they intend to convince people of in the end and work the process backwards. Find evidence, do the research to answer those key questions. And practically speaking, with a team, make sure only one person manages the presentation, but everybody participates in the pitch. Build in lots of time for discussion within classes. Learning how to find value and balance between different perspectives is one of the most important parts of the experience. Everyone should contribute to every discussion and every decision. Learn to lead and to follow. And this is an important thing for students to learn how to be a leader in a team, but also to contribute and be a follower without having to drive the bus. Manage parallel workflow. Get students to figure out how to divide and conquer. Focus on what you can do in the next week and who's going to do what. And when you arrive at that point, do it again. Challenge the ideas often as faculty. Challenge the students to defend their decisions, rationalize their decisions, challenge the quality of their information. Force them to balance between their own point of view and external points of view. Give them their own space. Get out of the prearranged and fixed desks. Create a space that the students can own and organically change over time. Give them opportunity to present physical and digital materials and work in the space real time outside a classroom. And make it as real as possible. Connect the projects to genuine opportunities. Work with external partners if you can. Feeling like the project can continue beyond the class is highly motivational to students. So these principles work in pretty much any context: student project teams, venture teams, sponsored research, corporate innovation teams. We've tested them with pretty much any and all and found good success. To circle back, super teams are kind of the norm, right? Several disciplines are connected closer under the same process to think broadly and develop ideas and solve complex problems. That's becoming the norm for innovation teams pretty much in any industry I've worked in. So This is kind of the call to action. Before you ask students to work on a project together in a team, ask yourself if there are ways that you could increase their chances of success by facilitating that experience more intentionally. And there you go. I know that was super fast. I apologize, but
right on time. You have 5 minutes left for Q&A, just like you were watching the clock.
that's right.
You can either type it in the chat or just unmute and ask.
Maybe I did such a good job there were no questions, or everyone's tired because it's 4:30.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in this presentation.
Yeah. Thanks for bearing with me. That probably was about a 45-minute presentation in 25 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, John. A lot of interesting things, Spence, here. One thing I'm curious about, and you might have mentioned this at the very beginning, were these related to a specific class? Did they get credit for, or were they projects within a variety of classes? How was that handled?
So that's a great question, Spence. I have to say, with the exception of the workshops, pretty much every one of those projects was done as what we call a special topics. And so we do have courses where we could implement this kind of thinking, and we do in our entrepreneurship course. However, for all of those experiments, we kind of broke free of those guidelines, and we created classes specifically to facilitate those projects. So the students did get credit, but we did them either through independent study projects or special problems project or special topics projects where we could create our own 3-credit design project class and work together and basically craft everything from the learning objectives all the way down through all of the activities and the student experience from scratch, intentionally as an experiment. So, but your question is good, because that is, I think, the next challenge is how to scale it, how to institutionalize that a little bit more and fit it within existing course structures and things like that.
And I would add to that it's very much upper level, graduating seniors, almost thesis levels, because they have to have such a body of knowledge to even start and be independent.
Yep. Lori asked the question, what didn't work? What stands out as potential problems? I'll tell you, the number one thing that the number one issue that I have experienced with teams is personality conflicts. And we've tried everything from personality profiling to help place students on teams, which kind of worked. But you really don't know until the students are in a position where they have to kind of defend their ideas and make decisions about who's going to do what. And some of those alpha personalities really come out, and you don't know until you get into it. But on the same token, on the other side, we don't resolve those conflicts for them. We tell them, this is a team. You're all being judged against the same learning outcomes. You figure it out. If you can't figure it out, the whole team is doomed. You have to work together. You have to figure out how to support those other people. You have to figure out how to resolve your differences, and we put it back on them to do that. Kind of like real life. Got just a couple minutes. Any other questions or thoughts?
Has COVID really put a damper on being able to put a team together?
Oh, it's certainly changed things. And so most of this work rolled up into a big grant project we're doing with Spectrum Health right now. And the first 2 years of the grant, we had all of these great things I showed going. And then this year, we experienced all kinds of challenges. The students couldn't get into the hospital. They couldn't watch surgical procedures, so they couldn't see the context they were designing for. And everything had to be done remote. I think using Microsoft Teams has created a great platform where the students can interact. Our bigger challenge is maintaining meaningful connections and building relationships with stakeholders outside the class. So I feel like the students manage that transition pretty well, but all of the other people we depend on for those expert point of views and information, that probably suffered the most. And I can see it, unfortunately, in the quality of information and the pace that the students are working in, and we're doing our best to get over it. But that has certainly been a hurdle all year for us.
Well, with that, it is 4:30, and I want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to John. I think Jody is our tech person, got everything under control here.
Yep.
So